Hey guys, before we get started today, I want to give a shout out to the Waddell Show podcast. Every week, WWA owner and booker Chris Waddell and his brother Ray Waddell are joined by super producer Cortland Moore to discuss topics related to my home, the World Wrestling Alliance. Get insight on WWA wrestlers and shows, backstage stories, and just life in general. It's available now wherever you get your podcasts, and check out youtube.com/WWAisNow for full, free World Wrestling Alliance shows.
You know, this last week, we lost one of the greatest ring announcers of all time, Mr. Howard Finkel. This entire show, anytime that a Raw match would happen, you'd hear his voice, and it's like, God, you were one of the best of all time. There's no arguing that.
Longest tenured employee, too. He was the first person hired into the WWF by Vince McMahon when he bought it.
And that guy's been so loyal to the company.
He just loves wrestling.
It was continuous, right? Like there was no period of time where it's like, oh, we gotta excommunicate Fink for a little bit. No, he was.
Yeah, I think so, because when he leaves ring announcing, he's, talent relations, travel coordinator, .com guy. He just did whatever they needed him to.
Was he not their statistician as well?
He might have been, yeah. Sounds right.
He was the guy that would always go and sit there and write synopsises of everything that's going on everybody else's programming and send it back to Vince in the office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Finkel report.
I can barely sit here and try to relive 5 or 6 shows from a pay-per-view that happened 10 years ago. Imagine making your living off trying to just watch ECW and WCW and USWA or whatever else is happening out there at the time. That guy was committed. Just know that we love you, Fink, and we always appreciate what you've done for wrestling, man.
We'll miss you.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself. Some of you may know me, and some of you may not. My name is Howard Finkel. I'm also known as The Fink, and I am the premier ring announcer in the World Wrestling Federation.
The greatest in-ring announcer in the history of professional wrestling, surpassing even the great Jimmy Lennon of Las Vegas. Dear to my heart, Finkelmania, Howard Finkel.
Hey, Jesse.
Hey,
how you doing?
Good,
Hello,
good.
Ian, how are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, the return bout between Morocco and Hulk Hogan will be for the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship, and it will be held inside a steel cage.
The Hitman, Bret Hart.
The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Bobby the Brain Heenan. Rick the Snake Roberts.
Weighing 520 pounds, the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant.
And you, World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Champion, the incredible Hulk Hogan.
I've announced some of the greats in this business as champions with a signature word. From San Martino to Backlund to Hogan to Flair to Bret Hart to The Rock to Austin to Triple H to The Undertaker to Shawn Michaels to John Cena and many more, I wanted to make their ascension to the throne memorable and remembered by how I announced their win. Well, tonight I'm going to steal a page from my playbook, if I may. Ladies and gentlemen, I, the Fink, Howard Finkel, am a new inductee into WWE's Hall of Fame class of 2009. Thank you very much.
Today on Ruthless Passive Aggression, we call into question Jim Ross's journalistic integrity. The dead man needs his shots, and only one of the greatest tag team matches in company history. That is all being discussed today on Ruthless Passive Aggression.
Who has enough ruthless aggression.
This is Ruthless Passive Aggression with your host, Jake, Drake, and the WrestleBucket.
Hello and welcome to Ruthless Passive Aggression, the podcast where we take a passive look at the good, the bad, and the worst of the golden age of grappling, the Ruthless Aggression era. I'm Drake Jackson.
I'm Jake Edwards.
Hello, friends and neighbors. I am the WrestleBucket, rolling into your ears on my side naturally. I'm sorry. I came on too strong. I tend to do that. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet now.
Well, you might notice we sound a little bit more tinny. We tried this out with the Q&A episode. We're recording the podcast via Skype because if you're listening back to this at a later date and binging, we're still under quarantine from COVID-19, but that's not going to stop us.
Hell no. We're still going to try to find a way to make this happen. We got to talk about Ruthless Passive Aggression somehow.
No, there's no stopping this train.
In fact, it's easier because we're at home. We're not doing anything. There's hours upon hours of time that needs to be filled. Why not fill it in with 15-year-old wrestling pay-per-views? And then we get to talk about it from the comfort of our own bedrooms.
There's not a better way to pass this quarantine time than to settle down with Katie Vick and begin watching Ruthless Aggression era pay-per-views.
Ugh.
You got your shit in early.
Yeah. So today we're covering No Mercy 2002.
No mercy.
The build to this one was pretty strange.
Just a little bit. I mean, there's some great matches in this pay-per-view, and then there's some weird, like, Eric Braeden soap opera builds to this show.
He retweeted us.
Yeah.
I tweeted out a photo of D'Lo Brown looking at a laptop talking about Eric Braeden, and he retweeted us and, gave us a little signal boost. We got about 10 or 15 more retweets from soap opera fans, so we're pretty big on soap opera Twitter now.
It's a couple of those people that retweeted, like, you look in their bios, like, they're like, oh, I love soaps and I love pro wrestling. So it's like, oh, you get the best of both worlds in this tweet, man.
It's one in the same. And hey, if you're brought to our show through that, we'd like to welcome you with open arms.
Get ready to hear a bucket talk about the amazing things about wrestling.
Thank you, Aaron Braeden.
Eric Braeden.
Oh, my God.
How dare you disrespect the patron saint of the Ruthless Aggression era, Eric Braeden.
I don't even know him. I looked at his face. I took a passive look at his ruthless face, and he retweeted our tweet, and I still don't know who we're talking about.
He did. He seems like a good guy. I've been paying attention to his Twitter.
My mom was really into soap operas growing up, and she loved his show, and so I was like, "Hey, Mom, look, Eric Braeden retweeted us," and she's like, "Oh, that's nice, honey. That's sweet."
See, she was psyched.
Yeah, she was about as hype as we were.
Yeah.
A very mild roar came over our egos.
All right, so before we get too far into this, I did want to talk about earlier today. I'm looking up No Mercy 2002 on YouTube, see if there's any fun videos to watch or just some last minute looking up of things. And on YouTube, I found the full episode of Heat that came on before No Mercy 2002.
Oh my God.
Let me tell you, this thing, it looks like it was recorded on a VHS, recorded onto another VHS, sent through Windows Media Players, sent through Windows Movie Maker, re-exported. I mean, you could not read any titles on this thing. It was so pixelated, but the best part to me, I mean, you had Hurricane versus Stevie Richards. That was the only match that was live on the show. Other than that, it was recap packages. But let me tell you some of the stuff. They left the advertisements in. So this is 2002 in a nutshell. I saw an advertisement for Star Fox Adventures on the GameCube.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like it was going to be a pretty great game. And let me tell you, that was a great game. I actually had that. Mainly the commercial that they aired 2 or 3 times was for Now That's What I Call Music Volume 11.
You own this CD, do you not?
I do. So a little thing about me is that myself and my wife started buying Now CDs just to see if we could collect them, because you just find them for 50 cents here and there. And it's pretty cool to, kind of listen through some of them and kind of see how music changes. But Now That's What I Call Music, Volume 11 had such chart toppers as Hot in Here by Nelly. One of my personal favorite songs growing up, Hero by Chad Kroeger from the Spider-Man soundtrack. A lot of good stuff.
Oh man,
How's that
that's
one go? I forget that one. Can you sing us a little rendition of it?
And they say that a hero can save us. That one.
I think you did that better than he ever could.
You know what? I try.
Can we please start an entire Nickelback cover band? We just sing about wrestling. We make the covers about wrestling.
That's the other thing. The second verse in Hero by Chad Kroeger is sung by Josie Scott, lead singer of Saliva. And Saliva actually did a live interview on Heat because they were debuting the music video for their single Always, which is kind of a banger.
It's also the theme song for the next pay-per-view as well.
Yes, and so all three members of Saliva are standing in the World, WWE New York. They all three have microphones, but only the lead singer talks. The other two just kind of stare. And, they got on their football jerseys and their backwards hats and the mid-thousands, early thousands new metal attire. And Lita and Jonathan Coachman ask them, hey, you just worked with Chris Jericho on a new song, King of My World. What was it like working with Chris Jericho? And the lead singer goes, man, he seems like a pretty good guy. And Lita said, come on, we go way back, Josie Scott, lead singer of Saliva. We're best friends. What was Chris Jericho really like? And the lead singer of Saliva says, man, he just makes a Southern boy want to slap the taste out of his mouth.
I'm glad it took that turn, because I was going to be really mad if the lead singer of Saliva broke kayfabe by saying Chris Jericho's a good guy.
Well, now
it's okay.
Want Saliva versus Chris Jericho in a feud coming up.
We need a band off between the two on the Raw set. You just have Fozzy on one side, Saliva on the other, just going at it.
Nobody wins.
It's a dusty finish. The dusty finish. Nobody wins.
On this pay-per-view, there was a weird intro.
So, how was your week?
Usually, we get the pay-per-view package first thing, or something, some sort of music, something hitting us right off the bat. But all we see, and we'll get into the build for this as we go on, the Undertaker and Kane are sitting in a locker room, and the Undertaker walks in and says, so, how was your week?
Then we just fade to black.
It's so weird for pay-per-views to have a cold open. I almost expected, Undertaker to sit down and say, yeah, how was your week? And then Kane to look at the screen and say, live from New York, it's Sunday night.
I mean, they were cutting to the World, which is in New York, the entire night.
Let the truth be told. Kane is a murderer. Kane, you are a murderer. Denial fuels the anger. I am not. Kane is an accident. Why don't you tell the world the whole truth? You are a murderer. Guilt poisons the soul. It's something that I have to live with. It was an accident. Something that I've thought about every day since. Killed Katie Vick. The mind games are over. One show, one champion. The Intercontinental Champion facing the World Heavyweight Champion. Winner take all. Who will show no mercy? Kane might be able to take the life of a sweet girl like Katie Vick. You think I want to get in the ring with a murderer? Be able to take my title. In nomine Patri, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancto. Amen. Where's your head, Taker? Are we in it?
Is it haunted by ghosts from your past? Do you fear your unborn child may never see a healthy daddy? After this man unleashes his fury on you tonight. Yes, you were the Phenom during a decade of destruction. And this is your signature match. One which you have ruled with domination and brutality. But you've never walked through hell with a man as sadistic as Brock. A ruthless animal that has destroyed the greatest icon the world has ever seen. This is the new Phenom that is going to annihilate, lay waste to your legend, destroy all that you hold so dear. Undertaker, your destiny has arrived and condemns you to hell. Spirit the Son, that man, rest in peace.
So yeah, No Mercy 2002.
A lot of good matches in this show.
Hey, Jake. You watch all the shows leading up to this show, right?
I watched a majority of them, yes.
What's up with his hand?
Well, we'll get into how bad Undertaker got his hand messed up, but it involves Matt Hardy, a woman that apparently Undertaker's having relations with, and a propane tank. We'll just go with that.
See, my favorite thing about that hand is we were just talking a couple episodes ago about how they badly just kind of paste the Intercontinental title onto Chris Jericho's shoulder in the match card. And so on YouTube, I like to look up the match cards of Michael Cole and Taz running down the pay-per-view on the Friday before the pay-per-view to just kind of see the match graphics. And they did it again. Undertaker's in his pre-match graphic, and we'll upload footage of this onto our socials, but you know, Undertaker's showing off his strikes and punching at the camera, and if you watch his hand, they have put a cast over his hand and it's just kind of floating there.
He had several weeks where he was wearing that cast. Could you not put a green screen up somewhere in catering and shoot that for like 5 seconds?
Could have done something, right?
Jesus. Somebody got really bored in like 2002 Adobe After Effects.
They're on a cold streak of just adding floating objects to their matchup screens.
Now listen up, pal. I really need you to do this for me. We got to keep the kayfabe. We got to make sure that Undertaker has a broken right hand.
What's the worst to me is that there was some video editor that looked at this and was like, hey, yeah, this is good. It can go on TV.
It's perfect.
I like to think it is Vince himself.
I mean, it's crudely done, so it very well could be VKM. There were a couple things that didn't make it onto this show. There was a couple things. One, we kind of ended the brand split stealing superstars storylines. Just like randomly on an episode of Raw, I think it was like the September 23rd Raw. JR and King just kind of randomly announced, it's like, oh yeah, Eric Bischoff announces that all contracts are locked in. And it's like, we're still going to have a bunch of people debut like on shows in the coming weeks to like, they're going to switch brands. It's like, that made zero sense to me. It was like, one week Randy Orton jumps over to Raw and then hurts his arm. Hurricane jumps over like the week after this. That made no sense to me. But
oh yeah, like, there's an entire tag title reign in this build-up that we don't even know about if you just watch the pay-per-views.
Right. I can't wait to try to explain that because it's so damn confusing.
As Chris Jericho, he was IC champ the last time we saw him.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's no longer a thing, but now he's tag champs.
Yeah. And he didn't win any of those titles on pay-per-view, so he just keeps... I imagine you're confused just seeing the pay-per-views, and he just keeps showing up with a different championship.
I mean, he's Jericho, so like I understand that he's in the position that it makes sense for him to, but like this is some hot shot booking. Like like they really don't know what they're going for, do they?
Not really.
And it's just on Raw. SmackDown, there's like a lot of strategically done storylines, and you're not seeing all this stuff get really changed up the way that you're seeing it on Raw. Brian Gewirtz is doing something weird in his time working on Raw during 2002.
Yeah, because he was head writer over there at that point.
His lower third on the Ruthless Aggression documentary says he was head writer at the time. I probably wouldn't be bragging about half the shit that's on there, but
You have to put an asterisk, like if you're a writer for wrestling in WWE, because by the time you create an idea, present an idea, get the idea accepted, like maybe it's your vision all the way until Vince hears about it. And then all of a sudden it's Vince's thing and he's going to frame it the way that he wants to frame it. So like we have no idea if any writer has ever been good at anything, because it gets put through the kaleidoscope that is Vince McMahon's vision and comes out all blah, blah, blur, 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 blur. You're like,
we also have a very strange feud between Chris Nowinski and Tommy Dreamer that happens on Raw, and there's this. It's basically a backstage match. They have it's called like a Harvard classroom match, basically, where Chris Nowinski and Tommy beat the shit out of each other with Singapore canes for like 5 minutes straight. And it's like they just go in, they're like in some back room at Raw, and they're beating the shit out of each other with like globes, like your Ray McNally globes. They just start beating each other up backstage because they had like a fight 1 week over Singapore canes in a hardcore match. And then like a couple weeks later, they just have this, what's probably Chris Nowinski's best match ever. It's kind of like the Firefly Funhouse match if he was a Harvard graduate.
Now I've got to see this.
how did this not make pay-per-view? I'm so upset. Like Tommy Dreamer, I just want him to point to his hometown on the globe and go like, this is where I'm from, and then hit him in the head with it.
This is where Yonkers, New York is at, you little bitch.
Is the Nowinski Molly Holly stuff done, I guess?
They did not mention anything of it after Molly Holly's match with Trish at the last pay-per-view.
So is Molly Holly still doing stuff?
I think the next night, and we'll kind of discuss this a little bit. She had a triple threat match between her, Victoria, and Trish for the women's title, and that's the last time I've seen her so far.
Okay.
She'll pop up at some point, I'm sure, but that they kind of swept the Molly Holly as a virgin storyline under the rug.
Oh, good.
It's a blessing in disguise, let's be honest.
Gotta make room on the writing board for, there's a whiteboard in the WWE offices that says like Katie Vick, HLA2 ? Going into the pay-per-view, the first match we get started, first thing that happens, World Tag Team Championship match. Chris Jericho and Christian with the World Tag Team titles are going up against who I like to call Book Dust. Booker T and Gold Dust.
Book Dust.
So last time we saw Jericho on pay-per-view, he was the Intercontinental Champion. Now he's tag champs with Christian, who is no longer part of the Un-Americans because the Un-Americans have split up. There's been a lot of change.
This, like we've said, half the storylines on Raw have just really changed up. The night after Unforgiven, you've got Kane beating Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental title in the main event. You've got the Un-Americans, sadly, they start splitting up the night that, like in the weeks after this. Booker T and a bunch of people get in trouble with Eric Bischoff for showing off Rikishi's ass being shoved in his face during the HLA segment.
Yeah, I saw the segment from backstage where they're showing the entire face locker room, the tape of Rikishi's butt going into Eric Bischoff's face. So they're standing around a TV and Booker T's going, hey, check this out, man. Check it out in slow motion. It's just that shot of Rikishi's butt on Eric Bischoff's face. and they pan over and Rico's looking into the locker room and Rico's just like, I'm telling Eric, and leaves.
He's kind of like Randall from Recess.
Miss Finster!
So because of the whole issue with Bischoff and Booker T and Goldust, Bischoff kind of throws those two into matches against 3-minute warning, in a couple of other matches where they're being punished for their sins. Like Jericho kind of becomes like a kiss up at some point, and he ends up kind of reaping the rewards for being on Bischoff's side with that whole situation. A week after that is the very first ever Raw Roulette in Vegas. And like, if we ever need some content for a bonus episode, this is a hell of a show to do as a bonus episode.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good. But the main event, it's a TLC 4-way tag team title match between Kane, Christian, and Jericho, Jeff Hardy and RVD, and Bubba and Spike Dudley. In the kind of the build up to the Kane match, the Kane Triple H match, Ric Flair and Triple H beat up Hurricane, which helps Kane lose the tag team titles. So that's a really good match, but they end up losing the tag team titles there, and that's how Christian and Jericho pick up the titles.
Actually, I do remember this. The TLC match, they retain, even though Hurricane gets beat up.
Shoot, you're absolutely right.
And I only know this because I had the first ever DVD of ladder match compilations from WWE, right? And one of the matches on there is that Raw Roulette TLC. So as a kid who didn't really watch this the first time, watching now on DVD with even less context is weird. Because they're like, Kane's defending the tag team titles. They don't really mention on commentary where Hurricane is. They're just like, oh yeah, here comes Kane. He's got to defend the tag titles. You don't have any context that each of these people had picked their own partners earlier in the night. So all of these teams are just randomly assembled. But I do remember it was a great match on just Raw with no buildup. Just the fact that unadvertised fatal 4-way TLC match for the World Tag Team Championships. Also, not so fun fact about that TLC match, Jericho does a bulldog to Bubba Ray Dudley from the top of the ladder to the ring, and it gives Bubba Ray Dudley, they've talked about this in several interviews, Bubba Ray Dudley gets a concussion. The concussion is so bad that whenever he's being checked out and he's in the ER, he keeps asking Chris Jericho where his mom's at, and his mother had passed away 6 months earlier.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so he could not remember that. And so Chris Jericho had to keep reminding Bubba that, hey, no, she's not coming, bud.
Oh my God. That's
it's one
terrifying.
of the worst stories I've ever heard.
I think I remember hearing that, but it's like, man, you gotta, as crazy as some of the stuff they do in there, you gotta give them respect for putting their bodies through that kind of shit.
It's so nuts. And you can tell that whenever Jericho does the bulldog to Bubba Ray off the top of the ladder, I mean, Bubba Ray takes that front bump from the top of the ladder, doesn't put his hands out, nothing, just kind of like dives head first. And as soon as it happens, it's just like, oh no.
Yeah.
But I say all that because it's very strange for Kane to retain the World Tag Team titles in the TLC, and then Jericho and Christian just beat him for it the next week anyway.
You want to show Kane's strengths, but it was just weird seeing that fold out over a couple week period.
From what I understand, they were just booking from week to week, and they were just going to figure it out later.
Right.
At that point, which is so weird. Like, think about how good of a story you can tell if you have like a purpose, but it seems like with everything that you're outlining to me, that it was just all haphazard and no one knew what was happening where. Thank God Eric Bischoff locked in all those contracts, or they'd be jumping every single week.
Yeah. And you'll see a lot of that in the Ruthless Aggression era, is that how they're obviously booking week to week.
I mean, they're doing that today as well.
Right.
They, in the replay package of like, whoa, what builds up to this feud? Like, the only thing they show is like Booker T giving Jericho a beatdown on the ramp. And it's one of the weakest looking beatdowns I've ever seen in my life. Like, if someone were to attack me, I don't know if I'd be less offended because it was such weak sauce, or would I be even more offended that it, like, I had to like sell like, man, you're like barely even touching me and I gotta look like you're murdering me. Like, maybe I'd be mad too, or maybe I wouldn't. I don't.
Man, I got a blade for this spot. This is bullshit.
So there's a moment in this match that, for all the shit I give Jerry Lawler on commentary, there's a pretty funny line where either Christian or Chris Jericho's choking their opponent, and Lawler says, "That's a cover. Come on, ref, count it." Jim Ross says, "Actually, Jerry, that's a choke." And Lawler says, "Yeah, it's a throat cover." Goldust and Booker are over in this match. I mean, as far as you can see that popularity for both members of this team rising, but namely Booker T. I mean, they kind of build him as a huge face, like, between the last pay-per-view and this one.
I mean, that was one of my first notes about this, is just how hot the crowd was for him. The guy's been busting his butt and having some fantastic tag matches, and then has also been putting on some really good singles matches in the last few months. So, I mean, that guy's earning his stay for sure.
If you go on wrestling's side of the internet long enough, you're eventually going to come across a top 10 list. And the vast majority of those top 10 lists feature the dubious booking of Booker T around this time, you know, always culminating in, you know, like the loss at WrestleMania that definitely should have been where he went up. And I wasn't around for it initially. So I was always like, why is this on every single list? Why? Just like what culture? Get over it. Like, Booker T lost at WrestleMania. It's fine. But this match specifically, as you guys are saying, his reactions here are absolutely tremendous. Like, everyone was so behind him that now I like finally understand. Like, it was his time. That was a travesty, and as sad as it is, we're gonna have to live through it. You know, well, how many pay-per-views are away where we are from that?
Oh, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
So this match is really infamous for being one of the big viral wrestling videos on the internet, especially the early days of the internet. And I like to call spots like these a LimeWire spot. Because anytime you search wrestling videos on LimeWire, I mean, there's always very sketchy things, but there are infamous moments that you would always find and be able to download. And it was always Undertaker throwing Mankind off the Hell in a Cell. There's just like some really weird wrestling videos on there, and they weren't always labeled correctly.
It was the precursor to .gif files.
Yeah. Wait, .gif?
GIF.
Oh, GIF. I thought you said J. I thought you were one of those guys that pronounces it GIF.
You see, I refuse to say that word out loud because I don't want either camp to come after me. So I just call it a .gif file.
It's 100%. It's GIF. It's GIF.
Are you sure? I think it's GIF. You don't say graphical interface format. It's graphical interface format. It's got to be a GIF.
I mean, so I always used to say GIF, and then I heard that argument, and I was like, well, damn it, now I have to call it a GIF.
Nope, well, I refuse to engage. .gif.
You refuse to be part of the problem, right?
With this being one of those GIFable moments, Jericho goes for a triangle drop kick, and the middle rope just explodes. It didn't just come off. Like, I've been to shows before where the rope comes off or just like a turnbuckle comes off. The rope looks like it just blew up.
Destroyed.
Yeah.
I wish that the commentary team would have... They could have folded this into the story so easily. If you watch this moment, Goldust is right by the turnbuckle. If they would have just said something like blatant, like, I think Goldust undid the turnbuckle rope. Like, he's so close to being there, even though, like, he he didn't do anything, obviously, but like they could have like sold it into the match and like folded it in and baked it and had a nice little pie and just like it would take the piss out of everyone being like botch, you've effed up, you effed up.
It turns into a great false finish too because Goldust has Jericho pinned and the ref is still messing with the rope.
Yes, you see it came off so good. You could have made the argument that it was because that was just perfect. Like, was it Charles Robinson? I think.
I can't remember.
I think it was Lil Nate.
It just like he didn't even know that he's such a good referee. He just straight up doesn't notice things even when he's supposed to.
Well, and to break up that pin, Christian grabs Chris Jericho's foot and puts it on the rope for a rope break, like the bottom rope. And I was like, oh yeah, that still counts. I mean, there's only 2 ropes, but I don't know, for some reason in my mind, like all rules went out the window.
Unless it was the Rob Van Dam Ric Flair match from Unforgiven, then they're screwed.
Right. So then Booker chases Christian into the crowd. Jericho bulldogs Goldust onto the tag titles while the ref is distracted. Jericho then awkwardly climbs up and just hits a moonsault off the top rope for the pin on Goldust. Jericho doesn't normally do top rope moonsaults or anything. My guess is that the match finish was supposed to be a lion salt after the bulldog, right. But you need the middle rope for the lion salt. So like he goes up top and he does this moonsault, and it's kind of like it's a very weird rotation. Like he did it, and I was like, oh, is he actually gonna make it over? And he did, but
he really struggled to try to get up to that top rope too. It's like I don't blame him. If I didn't have a middle rope too, I probably wouldn't be able to get there. But holy hell.
I know that technically the match that we witnessed was Book Dust versus those 2 Canadian guys. Technically, that's the match. But what I've noticed with every single Goldust match that we've watched in our 3 pay-per-views here, the real feud should be Goldust versus his outfit. There is always something happening with his getup, with his bodysuit. And with this one, he didn't have a random hole in it. It's just like there are 4 or 5 different notes where I'm just like, here's a perfect shot of Goldust's wedgie. Like him, and I wanted him to be managed by Janet Jackson. I'm sure she wasn't doing anything around this time. They could have been the wardrobe malfunctions, and it would have gone over huge.
It would have been perfect. It would have been a match made in whatever heaven Michael Jackson went into.
Funaki is backstage. Number 1 SmackDown announcer. He's here. He's with Al Wilson, and this is our introduction to Al Wilson in the broadcast, or in the podcast, excuse me.
One of the greatest characters from the Ruthless Aggression era, no doubt.
He only gets better. Fun fact, Al Wilson is Tori Wilson's actual father.
That's a shoot dad.
Yeah, shoot dad.
I was so about this segment that my phone now autocorrects Funaki to all uppercase whenever I type it. So I'll never be able to whisper it in phone ever again without it just going, Funaki! Exclamation point.
SmackDown's number 1 announcer.
So Funaki asks Al how Dawn Marie's sneak peek at her lingerie made him feel. Al's really hesitant about it. And then Funaki's like, Dawn Marie gave you another peek. Let's take a look. They just kind of show Al Wilson getting a sneak peek at Dawn Marie's lingerie. Like a replay of what happened on SmackDown.
I loved how this wasn't an interview. It was just an exposition dump. Like, Funaki was just, he did not ask a question, really. He just said, ooh, this happened. Ooh, peaks. He said the word peaks so many goddamn times. I was so tired of the word. It's a stupid fucking word. It's like, oh, you get a peak. And I'm just like, no, quit saying that word. It's like P with a K at the end. Like, okay, so just like, I love this segment, but I just want to express that peak is a dumb fucking word.
No wonder you hated this segment, because then Funaki talks about Dawn Marie giving Al Wilson a peek at her body and a peek at her lingerie. And then there's a replay of Dawn Marie giving Al Wilson her hotel room key. And Funaki then shows footage of Tori Wilson finding Dawn Marie and her father in the shower together at SmackDown. And Funaki's big question is, why was Al wearing clothes in the shower?
It was the exact same question that I had.
Oh, yeah, it was super valid. I was like, why is he got his clothes on? What's he doing?
He's just having a ball, man. He's just having a good time. He gets to go see what his daughter's doing at work, and he's like, "Oh, how did I get here?"
How was he going to explain that if he didn't get caught? Like, he walks up to Tori backstage and he's like, "All right, honey, let's go," and all of his clothes are just soaking wet.
Don't worry about it, sweetie. It's fine. I imagine Al being kind of like Larry David on that one show, whatever it is, and you just like see him walking through the shower.
Hannah Montana. That show that Larry David's in, Hannah Montana?
Yes, Larry David and Hannah Montana is exactly like Al Wilson hanging out with Dawn Marie in the shower.
At the end of it, Al Wilson says he did not have sexual relations with that woman. This 8-minute segment was all building to a Bill Clinton joke in 2002.
Do you get it? Do you get it? He's like Bill Clinton.
For our younger listeners out there, Bill Clinton used to be president of the United States.
What?
You may know him better as Hillary Clinton's bitch.
You may know him better as world-renowned saxophonist.
Oh, yeah, that guy. The coolest thing was all the references that Animaniacs dropped on him. Like, He's in the open of Animaniacs. But then again, our younger listeners, if they don't know who Bill Clinton is, they have no idea what Animaniacs is either.
I was just going to say, I've met Bill Clinton before. So one time I was working as a photojournalist for a TV news station. And this was back in 2016 when his wife was running for president. And he decided he was going to come to town. And I got to interview, I was like a part of like a large gaggle of people interviewing former President Bill Clinton. And after we got done, all the reporters there were asking if they could take pictures with him. And he said yes. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm never going to be able to like take a picture with a former president ever. So I walked up to him and I said, "Sir, may I take a picture with you?" And he said, "Sure." And so he like leaned up against my shoulder and he just looked up at me and goes, "God damn, you're a big boy." And then we took the picture.
Did you tell him he was a piece of shit for sleeping with Lois Griffin?
No. My favorite part about the whole Funaki thing is the only question he would ask Al outside of playing the videos is, how does that make you feel? He's like the world's weirdest sex therapist.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't it have been great if this was like a Pee-wee's Playhouse segment and just every time they said the word peak, you have, I don't know, a random cast of characters from this time. D'Lo Brown, Jonathan Coachman, Couchy the Couch, Minnie Does. Peak! Such a dumb fucking word.
So yeah, Funaki wraps up the segment by saying he guessed that Al doesn't understand English. And that actually got a big laugh out of me because Funaki has great comedic timing. And then it's back to the pay-per-view.
I personally don't think that this was supposed to happen. I think they just needed time to fix the ring. It was the perfect way to fill time.
They just like ran up to Funaki with some cue cards, some notes, and they were like, "Here, just fill time. Think of some questions to ask him," and that's the only thing Funaki could think of was to keep asking him how he feels.
And luckily, Al Wilson just happened to be there for the show, just hanging out with Tori.
That explains so much because Al Wilson just stands there looking all confused the whole time, and then the only thing he can think of to do is make a Bill Clinton joke.
It all scans.
Out of that, this is wrapping things into the prior segment. We go to Dawn Marie versus Tori Wilson, one-on-one. Strangely, I'm kind of into this. because, you know, the storyline gets looked back on, the segments get looked back on pretty negatively. But this is a mid-card women's feud that doesn't revolve around any sort of championship.
And unfortunately, any SmackDown women's feud at the time isn't going to involve a title since that's exclusive to Raw.
Right. And so, I mean, the Al Wilson stuff's cringy, but in all honesty, I'm just glad they got something for the women to do at this point that isn't, like, awful.
Glad you brought that up because, okay, this feud right here is infamous. Like, it does not have good press. Like, if you hang around on the internet long enough, you're going to find a top 10 video, and eventually you're going to come to one that says, worst storylines of all time, blah, blah, blah. And this one's always on it. So I was not looking forward to this at all in any conceivable way. Dawn Marie comes out. It's my first time ever seeing her. She has the most unfortunate slits in her outfit that made me very uncomfortable.
What made it uncomfortable?
They look like sideways vaginas, like really close to her vagina. I did not like it.
It's too much.
And Tori Wilson was in Baywatch gear. Did you guys notice that?
I did notice that.
She was doing her favorite Billy and Chuck impression.
Well, and they actually did pretty good in ring for, you know, the two people, because Tori Wilson and Dawn Marie don't have the best reputations when it comes to like in ring work. But there's a whole sequence where Tori Wilson sunset flips Dawn Marie reverses an Irish whip into the corner into a hot shot on the apron. I mean, it's nothing you haven't seen before, but it's some super athletic stuff. And also, with our theory of Uncle Taz teaching Michael Cole the ways of life, Uncle Taz attempts to explain some women's anatomy to Cole in this match. Dawn Marie headbutts Tori Wilson in the crotch, and Tori is obviously selling, and Taz goes, "Wait, I'm not too sure that would hurt Tori. She ain't got nothing down there." And Michael Cole says, "Well, I have no clue if that would hurt or not, Taz." And Taz says, "Well, you wouldn't know, Cole, but I would." And I don't know what that means. And also, getting headbutted anywhere would hurt. Like, women don't have steel crotches. They're not impervious to low blows.
I was mesmerized watching this match because I had no expectation for Dawn Marie whatsoever, because, you know, she came with all the stink of this feud. It's the only thing that she's known for in this company, really, and I think she was the better wrestler in this match. In fact, there are two women's matches on this card, and she wrestled the best out of all four of those competitors. I was losing my mind. I was like, am I biased? Like, what? I did some research around this. I paused this pay-per-view, and I just looked up other things that she had done in the company. And Dawn Marie is not a bad wrestler, but she will only ever be known for doinking Tori's dad, even though she was really good here. Wait, which part?
And they start doing the catfight roll spot, you know, where they hug up and roll around on the mat, and they steamroll over the referee. The referee pulls them apart and celebrates, and the crowd's like, "Hey, yeah!" Because wrestling in 2002 is just a big Miller Lite ad.
You notice how the ref kind of marked out in the middle of it? He tried to sell it like, "Oh, gross, I got wrapped up in it," but he's just smiling too big. It was like a game of Katamari. Like, I just expected the three of them to just like roll and like absorb everything, and then I guess that didn't happen because we would know about it.
Rip the ropes off and then roll up the ring. And
Dawn's reaction to that is just hilarious because she just gets up and just like looks at him in complete disgust and was like, "You are disgusting," and just like tries to sell that fact.
And she kind of has a point because, like, he's not getting steamrolled over by, I don't know, like Chris Jericho and Ric Flair on the last pay-per-view and being like, "Hey, check it out. Look what happened." So Cole says, "You know, if Al and Dawn Marie get married, then Dawn will be Tori's mother." And Taz says, "Well, I wish my mother looked like that." Do you? What purpose does that serve?
You wouldn't be able to do anything, Taz.
Right. You'd be endlessly made fun of. "Oh, hey, there's the guy with the hot mom."
Taz's mom has got it going on.
You don't want your mom to be the hot one. It just gets awkward. No. You can't have any guy friends. You've probably seen a porn before, Taz. Like, that has to be based on some kind of reality.
I was kind of mad, though, that Michael Cole's, like, already ruined that storyline. Like, he spoiled that whole storyline, like, 2 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's like, you bastard. You know what's going to happen in December. You know how we're going to build up to the Royal Rumble, you little bitch.
I like the hatred you have for Michael Cole spoiling future plans.
I mean, yeah, that's like an obvious thing. Why are you trying to already plant that seed into our minds?
So to finish the match, Dawn Marie charges at Tori Wilson, who sidesteps, slingshots Dawn Marie onto the top rope. Tori hits a swinging neck breaker and pins Dawn Marie.
It was a pretty vicious swinging neck breaker, too.
It was really good. People look back on this feud and look at the skits and the segments and thinks that, like, the matches must be bad, but this was worth the watch, I thought.
I'll be honest, because I've had that view going into this match, because I remember what we're going to get leading up to Royal Rumble 2003, and I had such a sour taste in my mouth getting ready to watch this match, and they really surprised me on just how decent of a match it was.
If you go to YouTube and you look up Dawn Marie WWE, it is mostly bikini contests and cat fights, which is so sad because when I finally dug down under there and found a match, Dawn Marie was a good wrestler. Like, I have not been able to disprove that. So I was like, where did Dawn Marie go? Turns out the company releases her while she's on maternity leave. Can we get a wrestling chant going in here? That's illegal. That's illegal. I found a segment from Something to Wrestle With where Bruce Pritchard just says, like, yeah, she got saddled with some bad storylines. It's like, you think? Bruce, how many of those did you write? How many of those did you sign off on?
Yeah, and Bruce Pritchard always acts like he's not part of the problem.
If you find, it bothers me that she's this good of a wrestler and then it never went anywhere. So if you could please send me some evidence at WrestleBucket on Twitter that Dawn Marie was not a good wrestler, I'm going to have to sit with my conviction that she was good and there's been a severe injustice on the world.
Well, you know what she's doing now?
No.
She just tweeted the other day. I saw a post about it. She tweeted, I used to wear a bikini to work. Now I wear a mask, and she is a nurse.
Oh, that's awesome.
Out in the middle of the COVID stuff right now. So good for her.
Thank you, Dawn Marie, for your service.
Yeah.
She went from doing one thing that's really dangerous into something that's a little bit more normal and conventional. And now that's super dangerous. Can this woman not catch a break? The poor thing.
I'm sure she's glad that she doesn't have to do a bikini contest in the middle of a shift at the hospital now.
Oh,
she's not even verified on Twitter. This is the worst day.
I love how we went into like a Shaq rant last episode, and now we're going into the deep dives of Dawn Marie, and I did not expect that to happen this episode.
So far, that's our Mount Rushmore: is Shaq, Dawn Marie, Eric Braeden,
and Jamie Noble. Coachman
interviews Rob Van Dam backstage. Rob Van Dam is over his hill. Like we were talking about Booker T, Rob Van Dam's up there with him too.
I mean, that guy was my favorite Raw wrestler at the time. It was like Ray was my number one SmackDown wrestler, and RVD was my number one Raw wrestler. He did so much cool high flying stuff that he got over with the fans just from his in-ring ability alone. His promo work in this, though, not that convincing.
Yeah, please don't give Rob Van Dam backstage interviews. He does a parody of the Kiss Stealing Ric Flair promo, you know, Kiss Stealing, woo, like he does his woos and they all sound painful. Woo!
He's the chair smashing, woo, frog splashing, risk taking, yinging and yanging, woo, Van Daminating dude named Rob Van Dam. Woo!
What is worse, his promo here or his pathetic attempt at a strut? Because both are pretty bad.
Oh, yeah, it was pretty awful too.
I don't remember RVD having like just a promo that blew me out of the water. Did he have good stuff in ECW?
His stuff in ECW was all right. His entire character there was that he was Mr. Monday Night, and he was going to be going to WWE and WWF and whatever you want to call it because he was better than ECW for a little while. Like he was the big show off, like almost the sports entertainer inside of ECW, but he could get hardcore. But in ECW, he pretty much, I mean, Paul Heyman didn't really give him any promos. He was over on his series of matches with Jerry Lynn and his series against and tagging with Sabu. He had Bill Alfonso with him to do all the mic work as well, usually. So
why the hell did we not get him in WWE then?
They probably found the whistle annoying. I'm actually friends with Bill Alfonso on Facebook. I don't know why.
Did you invite him to like the podcast on Facebook?
I did. So he might be listening. Who knows? There's 4 former wrestlers that have added me. I think just trying to add as many people as they can in network. And I don't understand how I became friends with him. And it's him, Barry Horowitz, one of the Bushwhackers that I can't remember, and Rene Dupree.
Oh, we're going to tease that Rene Dupree story once again. I can't wait for that time.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a good night.
So as they're doing the interview, Coach then sees Brock Lesnar, Tracy, and Paul Heyman and tries to interview them.
Good old Tracy.
So Taker's been accused of something. And at this point in the pay-per-view, I wasn't sure what it was.
He's been accused of cheating on Sarah. Pregnant Sarah with this, as JR would constantly call her for the rest of the night, a Jezebel.
Oof.
So it's like Claire Lynch before Claire Lynch?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Except the storyline actually got like a conclusive conclusion, right?
Oh, yeah, later in the show. I looked up Tracy, and as far as wrestling goes, there wasn't much on her. But I did find her IMDb page.
Yes!
She is a former University of Arizona cheerleader and Playboy model. Here are her other credits. You guys can tell me if she's been typecast. In Back to the Future 2, she was Jacuzzi Girl number 2.
She is in one of the best sequels of all time. That is crazy to me.
In Fatal Charm, she was Dream Girl.
Ooh.
In Sunset Heat, she was Carl's Pool Girl. In the movie Score with Chicks, she was Unknown. In Beverly Hills 90210, she was Cheerleader. In TV's Lifeguard Babe, she was Model number 3. In Martial Law, she was Cocktail Waitress number 2. In Extreme Honor, she was Gold Digger number 2.
Oh my God.
In a movie called Skippy, she had a role labeled Hot Chick on Boardwalk. In The Scorpion King, she was Harlot. In a movie called Candy Paint, she was Booty Girl. And in an episode of The Man Show, she was Topless Bus Stop Girl.
Oh my God. I'm glad that she tried to step out of her comfort zone when it came to characters.
Out of all of these roles, the only place where she gets a name is in WWE, which we have discovered that they are not the most pro-women people at this time period, but at least they gave her a name.
Yeah, like these role names are awful.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman, and I'd like to introduce you to Topless Girl number 2. I think I'd appreciate an Undertaker loves stripper storyline than what we got.
It would be better if she was just stripper 1.
Undertaker's like, I was watching Back to the Future 2 in my hotel room. And I saw a girl in a scene, so I stuck around for the credits, and I said, who was Jacuzzi Girl number 2?
Do you think that they were sitting behind the scenes, like Paul, this girl, and Brock are sitting there, and she tells them that she's been in a movie with Michael J. Fox, and then Brock just looks over and goes, who the fuck is Michael J. Fox?
I mean, The dude is on record of not knowing who the Looney Tunes are. So
Really?
What?
I listen to a shit ton of shoot interviews, and you can't make cultural references around Brock Lesnar. He just doesn't get it. It's like, man, someone tried to make like a Roadrunner reference to him one time, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was raised on a farm.
Apparently, they can't get Looney Tunes on the bunny ears out in Minnesota.
Coming up next, Ric Flair versus Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam's finally getting some revenge on Ric Flair for the last pay-per-view.
Did this match happen to much lesser effect in TNA at any point? Because as soon as I watched this match, I was like, ooh, here's a match between two generations that we'll probably never get to see. And I was like, they were in TNA at the same time, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it happened.
That was probably like his last match ever.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it didn't happen.
This one was better. I was actually kind of excited for it, even though I'm not a big Ric Flair fan, and I was not disappointed.
It seemed like Van Dam just forgot about Ric Flair until like a week or two before the pay-per-view.
Yeah, he had a couple of weeks where where Van Dam was trying to get revenge for losing to Triple H at Unforgiven, and then he tried to win the World Tag Team titles with Jeff Hardy. Like we said before, a lot of these Raw storylines are just kind of all over the damn place. Main event of the September 23rd Raw, Triple H and Ric Flair face RVD and Bubba Ray Dudley in the main event in a tag team match. Ric Flair and Triple H get the victory in that match, but RVD and Bubba are able to get in some offense afterwards, trying to make up for what was going on. And then you go a couple of weeks without them really addressing RVD and Ric Flair until like that last week before the last couple weeks before the show. RVD and Triple H face each other in a Canadian lumberjack match one week, and we're kind of like getting off the rails a little bit, but I got to talk about this video that I posted on Twitter leading up to the Canadian lumberjack match. Early in the night, Booker T and Big Show are having a Falls Count Anywhere match, and they're just fighting backstage. Kind of in the corner of the screen, you see Ric Flair strolling through, and Triple H is driving a forklift. And nothing's referenced until like the next after the next commercial break, and so Triple H locks all the face wrestlers in the back. But that's like one of my favorite just little things that I've caught watching all these shows, because it's like you can kind of incorporate that into like a meme of some sort. It's like mom and dad are fighting, and you're trying to figure out a way to escape from your time locked up.
You sent me that video with no context, and my phone also compresses videos when I receive them. So I think the text was something like, hey, if you want to post this to social media, go ahead. And it was just like, I could barely make out that it was Booker T and Big Show. And then I heard like a forklift horn in the background, just like a doot doot. And I was like, what is going on?
It's one of these things that like I don't ever remember seeing happen, and it's like, how could you forget something like that?
Yeah, no memory of it.
And because you posted that video on our social media, we found out that we potentially may have one listener in the Philippines. So shout out to Kenneth from the Philippines for sharing our video. That, you know, I mean, it's a WWE's video, but anyway, shout
Kenneth,
out.
our dude.
Yeah, thanks, Kenneth.
Okay, so RVD loses that match, that lumberjack match, after Flair kind of interferes. And then the next week, RVD and Kane face Triple H and Ric Flair in the main event. And then RVD is able to get the Rolling Thunder and then a 5-star frog splash to pin Flair for the win. That's how we got up to this match.
Oh, we're teasing that Kane Rob Van Dam tag team. Something about Kane just ending up in very strange tag teams, like Kane and the Hurricane, Kane and Rob Van Dam, Kane and Daniel Bryan, Kane and X-Pac.
I was getting ready to say X-Pac.
I mean, it works. Every single one of those teams that I've mentioned, there were some great matches out of them.
And there was some great chemistry between the two partners as well.
Yeah, for sure. So in this, Ric Flair versus Rob Van Dam, Flair comes out on the network. Once again, we're getting Ric Flair, like a different version of Ric Flair's theme dubbed over. And the crowd noise dubbing over is so, like, you can tell because they're cutting to shots of the crowd, and the crowd, even though Ric Flair's coming out, they're kind of sitting on their hands or standing around and stuff. But man, the audio is just a crowd going ape shit on loop, just screaming. It sounds like the old games.
That's probably where they took it from. They probably got it from like WWF SmackDown for the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, and I still don't know why they've dubbed over Flair's theme, but I don't know.
I'm convinced there's some kind of weird contractual obligation where they had to change that. I'm going to plug one of my new favorite podcasts. JD and Turk from Scrubs have their own podcast now, and they're talking about how like when people would originally make contracts for using music in shows, it didn't include like live streaming. So that's why you don't hear some of your favorite songs from Scrubs being used on like Hulu versions of the show. So I've got a feeling that's probably what it is.
Yeah, maybe that would be the only thing that I can think of.
Or Flair just really didn't like that song and he was like, this version's much better. Just put it on the DVDs, okay?
Yeah, I got a new cover version by Saliva. I want you to use it. When this match starts, Rob Van Dam immediately slides out and attacks Flair, which is great because we've seen a lot of this on the pay-per-view so far. There's a lot of hot starts. It's personal vendettas against each other. They're not starting with a lockup. This isn't a scientific wrestling match.
I've gone out of my way to become a big proponent of chain wrestling. I love a good, like a slow build to a match. But you're right. This man hit another man in the head with a sledgehammer. They're not going to do arm drags.
Right?
Not going to do feats of strength. I mean, regardless, you probably wouldn't see feats of strength with those two, but
Rob Van Dam holds a world record for the Van Dam lift. Have you heard of that? That's like his lift that he invented, where he does the splits across two chairs and then overhead presses two really heavy dumbbells. So like he may be doing some power moves, but it's got to be some weird shit like, oh, I'm going to do the splits as well.
One of my favorite moments at the beginning of this match, when they are on the outside and Van Dam throws Flair onto the barricade and he kind of like flies over into the crowd. There's a kid sitting there wearing a referee shirt in like, I know it's not, but the kid looks like a very young Brian Zane. I was waiting for him to start doing a fake Jim Cornette impression, but it didn't happen.
I hope that's Brian Zane's origin story. Somehow he aged a lot after this within that period of time.
You know what my absolute favorite part of this match is? This is the first time I ever saw both competitors go for the rope break at the same time. It was amazing.
During the figure four?
Yeah, RVD tries to do an inverted figure four, and then Flair goes for the ropes, and Rob goes for the ropes, and I'm like, that's absolutely amazing.
There's also a spot earlier on where Ric Flair hits his knees and begs off, and it's kind of, that animation's always in the games. In Day of Reckoning, that's how Ric Flair could shift momentum, as he hits his knees, and the face takes it easy on him while he's begging, and then he low blows him. In this one, Flair hits his knees and begs off, and Van Dam just straight up drop kicks him.
Yeah.
Which is great because I'm tired of faces falling for that every time.
He got that early Day of Reckoning demo for the GameCube, and he knew what was about to happen. I thought there was a lot of good, a lot of great moves by Flair where he's trying to attack Van Dam's legs. You can't have a high flyer go off the top rope if you can't walk on one leg. A lot of the chop blocks. There was a lot of great, just when Van Dam's on the ground, he's sitting there stomping the shit out of his leg. It's really basic Ric Flair stuff, but he pulls it off really well.
I'm sure, I mean, you guys have seen Ric Flair matches. He always goes up to the top rope, and then his opponent, it's commonly known as the Flair bump, where Ric Flair goes up top, and in your mind, you're like, come on, get down from there, Rick, come on. And someone just grabs him and tosses him, and he flips into the ring. Do you know why he does that spot?
To, like, pop his back?
Well, no, I wish. He won I want to say one of his first NWA titles against Steamboat off of a crossbody. And Flair, even at that point, wasn't doing a top rope crossbody. So ever since then, and this is in the 80s, ever since then, he's never really landed something off the top rope. He just goes up top and someone tosses it off, which means that in kayfabe, that worked for him once in the 80s. And ever since, he's like, yeah, this will work.
20 years later, I still haven't connected.
If I'm not mistaken, his very last match on Raw, one of his last matches, if not the last match before, his WrestleMania match with Michaels, is against Vince McMahon. And Ric Flair does go to the top rope and he hits it on his very last Raw and pins Vince McMahon with his top rope move. So there are at least 2 recorded instances, but it was, did you say in the 80s? So that means it was 20 years apart.
Yep. What good storytelling to do that and pin Vince McMahon. Finally, it works.
It works on Ricky Steamboat. It works on Vince McMahon and literally nobody else.
Rob Van Dam does the Rolling Thunder, but Flair gets the rope break to break up the pin. Van Dam then kicks Flair, goes up top, and just hits the 5-star frog splash for the clean win. Flair really put Van Dam over strong here, I thought.
It was a really good back and forth match. And, Flair got his shit in, but I think Rob really got to shine with his moves throughout this match.
Yeah, and I think Ric Flair kind of realizes that, he's a big enough name at this point that he can help build up newer wrestlers while still maintaining a pretty good spot.
And it's like the amount of times that Rick's going to lose over the next few years. That guy, he's built up so much momentum as being the man. You want to see him win some matches, and he does, but it doesn't hurt him to lose a match like this.
Every single time we watch a Ric Flair match, I'm going to bring up how old he is and how good he is at this age. I like to say that he's high functioning, which is a phrase that takes a completely different meaning when we're referring to Rob Van Dam.
During this time, every commentator would kind of start talking about something that's not relevant to the match at all. About halfway through this match, JR and the King just kind of get on a random rant about the whole Tracy segment. I have the entire transcript here. Should I try to do a dramatic reading?
Go ahead.
Here's Jerry Lawler. Tracy's hot. She's a Jezebel. I don't care if the Undertaker had an affair with her. He's a very happily married man, and his wife is very pregnant. Yeah, but Tracy's hot, though. For some people, wedding vows mean something. If your wife's pregnant, let's face it. And then JR kind of starts calling the match again, and after a move, Lawler goes, JR, do you think pregnant women are attractive?
What? You are making this up. This did not happen.
It's exactly what they said. I sat there and I would listen to 2 lines from Lawler, pause it, and then type out what they were saying.
Oh my gosh, how much you miss when you're taking notes the entire time.
There's sometimes I love Lawler, and this is one of those times where I hate what he's doing, but it's fucking hilarious.
I was very surprised that Sarah was still pregnant. She went into false labor before the last pay-per-view.
That baby's not going to come out for another 6 months.
Wait, is this storyline false pregnancy or actual false pregnancy?
I think she actually is pregnant at this point.
I think she actually ends up having a kid because Taker's going to take some time off. I think after this pay-per-view. Yeah, I think Big Show takes him out in the next couple of weeks. So I think that was probably a shoot pregnancy. Has to be, right?
Shoot pregnancy. It's so weird that we have to note that because there have been work pregnancies before in wrestling.
Was her stomach a gimmick?
Backstage, Big Show talks to Stephanie McMahon. All the contracts, as you mentioned earlier, have been frozen. Talent can't appear on shows that they aren't part of anymore. So Bischoff wasn't allowed to get revenge on Stephanie after the last pay-per-view. That's a good way to make the excuse for why that feud isn't continuing. Big Show is looking for advice on an unnamed problem that they're being really weird about. Stephanie recommends Blue Chew.
Is that what she was calling SmackDown at the time?
If anyone's looking to do some fan art, please do the SmackDown logo, but it says Blue Chew. By the way, since we have a podcast now, that Blue Chew sponsor's coming. I'm expecting an email any day now.
Waiting for the Squarespace ad, the Blue Chew ad, and then I'm waiting for my Manscaped ad so I can shave a bucket.
From every podcast I've listened to with the Blue Chew ad, I think you can say just about anything you want. I don't know how much of a script they'll give you, so we'll just be like, hey, fellas, how's your wiener? How's it going? Eric Bischoff shows up. He wants to know why they're talking. He calls Big Show his property / Raw's property. Stephanie leaves. Big Show says he hasn't been on a pay-per-view since July and deserves better, which actually is a valid point because I've only been kind of paying attention, reading results to Raw, and I honestly didn't know Big Show wasn't on a hiatus or something. But Bischoff asks Big Show who in the hell he thinks he is. Big Show grabs Eric by the collar and says he is a very angry giant that belongs in main events. He suggests Eric puts him there soon and threatens to break Eric's neck the next time.
My favorite quote from Big Show there was like, I've just been sitting here with a thumb up my ass. And like, he just sits there and like takes his big ass hand and like pretends like he's shoving it up his big butthole.
Yeah, you see what I was talking about? This is what I meant. Yep. Just in case you don't understand, here's a little mental picture for you.
Do I need to do a diorama, Eric?
And his acting chops must have improved from then until now, because look at the guy. He's got his own Netflix sitcom, which is probably like high art, right?
Oh, yeah. I have not watched the Big Show yet, but I'm kind of wanting to.
I thought about doing it a couple of days ago, and I was like, no, I'm not that bored.
We'll have to wait and just like all watch it together and just film our reactions of it. That sounds like some good bonus content, or do you think we're too behind on it because it's been out for a hot second?
There's something to look forward to make it through quarantine. Hey, if you make it through on the other side, the Big show's waiting. You get to watch it with your friends, and you get to see, I don't know, Mick Foley make fart jokes. He's in the commercial. So after this, we got a video package on the Intercontinental title, which I thought was them going straight to Triple H versus Kane. But it was really just kind of showing off because tonight, Triple H versus Kane is title for title. Kane is the Intercontinental Champion, Triple H being the World Heavyweight Champion. They just randomly decided, hey, we got too many championships. These two are going to face off.
Our Intercontinental title still has the WWF logo on it, and the new one hasn't come in through Amazon yet, so we got to do something about this.
We got to get rid of this belt.
Can you guys tell me why WWE hates the Intercontinental Championship?
I mean, there's some bad stuff. There's some bad juju associated with that title. There's some great people from like the late 80s during the Attitude Era that held it, but there are some bad names associated with that as well.
I got misty-eyed watching this promo because, this was the IC title that I was introduced to in 2007. I think the current incarnation of the belt is not super pretty. So like I was getting I actually got offended while I was watching this promo because if things would have gone according to plan, the IC title would have died in 2002. And then when I came along 5 years later, there would be no IC title. So like I couldn't get invested in this match because the results are meaningless. The IC title gets back, 2 years later? Less than that?
Not even 8 months later?
It's not long at all.
And thank God it came back. Like, if it would have been gone like it was supposed to be in this show, some of my favorite title reigns would have never happened. There's no Umaga holding the belt. There's no Santino Marella. There's no Cody Rhodes. No Luke Harper. No The Miz. Some of the greatest IC champions of all times wouldn't have ever had it if the stipulations of this match would have been fully realized. And I just got super fucking pissy about it.
One of our favorite Intercontinental title WrestleMania matches where Zack Ryder wins. May he rest in peace. It was one of those matches where you didn't expect it to happen, but you were very happy that it did.
My best friend, shout out to Tyler. We did a little video earlier in the day before that WrestleMania where we were predicting winners. And in the video, Tyler says, I think Zack Ryder is going to win the Intercontinental title. And I look at him and go, why? And he's like, oh, I don't know.
That
And
absolute madman.
I was going to say, what do you know? It happens that night. And I did not hear the end of it.
Tyler has as good of a brain as Vince McMahon. You saw a lot of great things come out of the Intercontinental title that were highlighted in this video. You know, some people you didn't see that were featured in this video? People like the Texas Tornado, who held the Intercontinental title. Marty Jannetty held the Intercontinental title at one point. And they failed to mention the fact that the Mountie held the IC title for 2 days in 1992.
Did Val Venus make the package?
Oh, Val Venus made the package, all right.
Hello, ladies.
That was his entire gimmick.
What an unceremonious send-off for this belt. Like, it's the second most prestigious title in wrestling. And how does it go away? Triple H eats it after having sex with a mannequin.
Oh, why'd you remind me that we're going to have to talk about that?
Oddly, and we'll talk about it later, the sex hasn't happened yet. Which is not a sentence I expected to say when we started this podcast.
Happened the next night.
Yep.
Oh no. He gets rid of the Intercontinental title, and that's how he celebrates.
Yeah, that's his live sex celebration, like Edge and Lita. Coming up next, Cruiserweight Championship, Tajiri versus Jamie Noble. Jamie Noble has the Cruiserweight title.
Jamie Noble, baby.
So on SmackDown, Jamie Noble faced Nidia in a boyfriend versus girlfriend match, and I only say that because I just want to bring up how much that sounds like a SmackDown versus Raw glitch. Tajiri is the special guest referee. Like, it all loaded weird.
They really didn't do much with Jamie leading up to this. It was like Tajiri just happened to be the guest referee in this match, and that's how we ended up here.
I don't care how we ended up here. I had no idea this match was happening. Like, I see Tajiri come out, and I'm already pumped. And then Jamie Noble comes out next, and I'm like, this is going to be the greatest match on the card, hands down. And then they kind of slowly reveal that, like, how we got here was weird, but who cares? We're here.
Jamie Noble beats Crash Holly for the Cruiserweight title. The next week, they're sitting backstage, Jamie and Nidia are. Rey Mysterio and Nidia have a conversation in Spanish that ends with Nidia stomping off in a huff. She runs over to Jamie and complains that he wasn't there to stick up for her in this argument. Nidia then has a fit, slaps a cup of coffee out of the security guard's hand, and then they both get kicked out. And that's how they end up in the boyfriend versus girlfriend match. Noble has a hard time getting any offense in because he doesn't want to hit his girlfriend, and Nidia gets some pretty good offense in, and then Tajiri helps Nidia up after Noble tries to beat her up. Tajiri helps Nidia up, and Nidia slaps Tajiri in the face. Tajiri looks at Nidia as if he's going to attack her, and then Noble attacks Tajiri, and Nidia joins in on beating Tajiri. Noble and Nidia stare at each other, and then it ends up with a borderline sex celebration in the middle of the ring on top of Tajiri. But by golly, did they have a fantastic Cruiserweight Championship at this show.
Every match we've seen tonight started hot. We're seeing people get attacked during their entrances. We're seeing people just go at it right away, and it doesn't stop here because Tajiri drop kicks Noble during his entrance and then just does a moonsault to the outside. That's the first thing you saw.
When we watch these shows, we have our phones out or a notebook out and we take notes the entire time. And, sometimes you can miss things while you're taking notes. For the first time since we started this, I just put my phone down and watched the match. I didn't want to miss a goddamn second of this masterpiece. So my notes for this match is just what I remember afterwards, like what the high parts were. It's not me like meticulously like dissecting every little thing. It's just me and my genuine reaction after the match.
And the cruiserweight division around this time is known for that. Pretty much every match, I think that even if there's an awful story surrounding it, it's a lot of hidden gems in this era.
Like you have like the next year and a half where a lot of these very well trained cruiserweights just have fantastic matches, and then like 2 years from now the cruiserweight division goes to shit, but right now it seems to be going pretty good.
Tajiri has this signature sequence of strikes, and it's awesome every time where like, you know, he'll throw a strike, and then he just does all these rapid fire strikes and just keeps going like ha 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 ha. And as he's doing them, the crowd, you can hear them just like slowly rise, and it's awesome every time.
I mean, the crowd was really into this match. You don't see many crowds getting to cruiserweight championship matches nowadays. So, I mean, they really kept this crowd hot.
Jamie Noble screams ignorant trailer trash. Like he just works over Tajiri's back and just screams the entire time. And I was like, how? No wonder this guy's still employed and one of the greatest producers. He's a genius. Like, he wasn't speaking English, but it sounded just enough like English with his inane screaming that, like, I have been in Walmart before. That's how they really sound. He was so in character here, and God love him. He even down to the jorts, bro.
Yeah, who's got better jorts, Noble or Cena?
Oh, Jamie Noble, easily.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, because his are like, I don't know. I guess Cena's is supposed to be more like baggy jorts, which is fine if that's what you want to go for. But the fit of Noble's jean shorts here is just, he just nails every. I think Jamie Noble's a character actor. Like, he's Daniel Day-Lewis. He's not really Southern at all. He's probably actually English. And so, like, he got the perfect jorts for the occasion.
There are some great false finishes in this match as they get going.
Some great tiger bombs by Jamie.
Yeah.
There was a really good electric chair by Noble early on in the match.
Well, there's one where Noble blocks the buzzsaw kick and Tajiri slingshots Noble into the turnbuckle, hits him with the buzzsaw kick, and I was like, oh, there it is. But then when he goes for the pin, Nidia hops up on the apron and distracts the referee by kissing him.
Gotta keep up that cuckolding angle, man.
I realized at this point that Noble and Nidia's entire gimmick is that weird couple in high school that always makes out in the hallways.
I swear Taz called Tajiri Jerry a few times in the middle of this match.
There's a good couple of lines between Cole and Taz here. Nephew Cole says, Jamie Noble's really in trouble here. And then Uncle Taz just replies, well, there goes the double wide. That was the one where you spoiled the story, and I'm perfectly okay with it.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure whenever I mentioned the double wide in an earlier episode if that had happened yet or not. Because there's plenty of things that happen between Jamie Noble and Nidia, and Jake, I think you know what I'm talking about, that are just outrageous coming up.
I thought we were about to get one of my favorite Nidia storylines towards the end of that match.
Yeah, no, I thought it was coming too, and Bucket has no idea what we're talking about probably, but it's coming. It's some pretty fun stuff.
You make me nervous when you talk like this. The last time you talked like this, it was hot lesbian action, so I can only imagine.
I think you kind of know what's happening on this one, but
yeah,
I think you've mentioned this one before, but we're gonna swear to secrecy on this one as well.
So the finish to this match, after a series of reversals, Tajiri goes for a victory roll. Nidia grabs Noble's foot to keep him from getting rolled up, and giving Noble the leverage to block it, pin Tajiri, and retain the title. It was a really unique finish, I thought.
I'm glad that you knew what the name of the move was, where what Tajiri was trying to do, because I couldn't think of it to save my life.
And then what happens after that? What happens after that, Drake?
So, post-match, Tajiri makes out with Nidia, but Nidia likes it. Noble then says, let me show you how a real man kisses a woman, and he makes out with Nidia. While they're kissing, Tajiri kicks Noble in the back of the head, knocking him out on top of Nidia.
The most disappointing thing about this match was that I really thought when Nidia and Tajiri started making out, I thought he was going to mist in her mouth, and then all of a sudden we just see like green ooze coming out. But I guess a back kick in the back of the head is as good as anything.
Gross. It's better than what I thought. I thought when Noble interrupted and was like, "Let me show you how a real man does it," he was going to make out with Tajiri.
Are we just gonna make a storyline now where Jimmy Noble's like a bisexual lover?
Bisexual icon Jamie Noble.
I'm surprised they didn't hop on that bandwagon. I mean, it'd be really progressive having someone playing a trailer trash character like be that sexually progressive.
He's literally the Tiger King. That damn bitch, Carol Baskins. Nidia fucking hates her too.
Chris Benoit's backstage. He's looking for Eddie Guerrero. Eddie thinks Chris is looking for a fight, but Chris tells him that Chavo Guerrero is getting his ass handed to him by Kurt Angle right now. Eddie hears Chavo screaming behind the door, but doesn't enter the room. He thinks it's not really Chavo and tells Benoit he's not falling for it. He thinks Chris is trying to lure him into that room so Kurt Angle can attack him. And that's not Chavo's voice. That's a little girl's voice. Which at this point I was like, oh, cool. False alarm, everyone. Kurt Angle's just beating up a little girl. Chavo then gets thrown out of the room, revealing that it was Kurt beating up Chavo in there.
I have never seen in any form of media some sort of line of dialogue delivered so badly at the beginning. Like, I could tell Eddie was lost in this entire thing, and he was kind of rushed and whatever. But all of a sudden, like, you know, when they're standing outside the door, the more he talks, the better it is. And he just, like, builds this momentum, and he absolutely saved this segment.
Yeah, for sure.
It kind of, like, bounces off of a story from a few weeks before where Los Guerreros kind of chased Chris Benoit into a closet, and they were pretending that Kurt Angle was beating up Chris in the closet because, you know, it was pitch black, and turns out it was actually Chavo. And I guess Chris and Kurt kind of figured out what was going on. Eddie and Chavo got a taste of their own medicine there.
Winner take all. World Heavyweight Championship versus Intercontinental Championship. Triple H versus Kane.
For the first time in my life, I'm happy.
Was a friend of mine.
10 years ago,
It was an accident.
you killed her.
I didn't kill her.
You are a murderer.
We went to a party and Katie had too much to drink, so I decided that I should drive her home.
You were drinking too, Kane.
It was dark, the road was slick, and an animal jumped right out in front of us.
There were empty beer cans in the car.
Katie was killed instantly. But it was an accident.
You killed Katie Vick.
I'm sorry.
Kane might be able to take the life of a sweet girl like Katie Vick, but he will never be able to take my title.
Triple H he's acting like a very desperate man. Does Triple H have a heart or a soul?
You think I want to get in the ring with a
So last time on the, in the pay-per-view timeline, Kane did not have the Intercontinental title. It was Chris Jericho.
Yeah. There's just so much happening over the last few weeks of Monday Night Raw. One week, Kane and Chris Jericho have a match for the Intercontinental Championship, and then Kane takes it home. And then a week later, him and the Hurricane win the Tag Team Championship. And it's been kind of a cluster, just everything that's been going on with some of these titles on the Raw side. Kane's really starting to get more confident in himself. He talks about how freaks are awesome in an interview with Terry after he wins the Tag Team Championships. And so he's really starting to get more comfortable with himself. And then Triple H and Ric Flair have other ideas once Kane becomes number one contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. He wins the IC title on the September 30th Raw, beats Chris Jericho in the main event. It was a big match. It was a really fun match. A lot going on in it, but Kane comes out victorious in that match. Now we get to talk about our favorite storyline outside of HLA. Let's talk about Katie Vick, guys.
Oh yeah, because you can talk about champion versus champion this and Kane versus Triple H that, but that doesn't make a story. That's not enough to sell the pay-per-view. Champion versus champion? No, we have to add Katie Vick.
So who is Katie Vick? At the end of the October 7th Raw, at the very end of Raw Roulette, Triple H is standing on the top of the stage, and he says that he's warned Kane that his life wouldn't be the same after that night. He says that Kane is happier than he's ever been. But he asks about how happy Katie Vick is. And he wants to know why Kane killed her 10 years ago. And then accuses Kane of being a murderer. And then that's how we end that Raw.
What?
The big red murderer.
It's better than what Jerry Lawler called him at the beginning of this match. He started off when Kane started walking down the ring. He was like, "Look at this big French fried motherfucker."
Did he really?
Yeah, he didn't say motherfucker. He starts the match.
Put it past him.
He's like, "Look at this big French fried freak," and I was like, "Damn, that was a semi decent line."
Yeah, it's not bad.
I was wondering, why put the title on Kane so hastily, and then it finally occurred to me. They had just got done doing the Triple H versus RVD. They had the title on heel Jericho, and they needed a babyface to hold this title. Mm-hmm. And Booker T's incorporated into his match with his tag team with Goldust. So there really was, I can't think of any other viable options. It's almost like Kane is just in this match because he's the only baby face with enough status to be in this match.
Yeah.
Triple H versus Bubba Ray Dudley was an option, but
I really want to see Katie Vick involved with Bubba Ray Dudley.
Okay.
Honestly, that would have made more sense because Bubba Ray Dudley doesn't have any mythos that would exclude him from having a normal ass life and a normal ass girlfriend. Unlike Kane, where I'm trying to figure out when Paul Bearer let him out of the basement to have a girlfriend.
There was a fictional book that came out probably around 2005, 2006. It's Journey into the Darkness, right, Drake?
Yes. Yep.
In that book, it's Kane kind of escapes from Paul Bearer and lives in foster care, and that's how he is able to live normal life. They never dive into this in WWE canon storyline, but in the book, that's kind of how it works out.
Honestly, that makes me feel better. Headcanon confirmed.
I just want photos of Kane at prom with Katie Vick, and he's wearing his nicest suit and his nicest mask.
I mean, I wouldn't be upset about that. What's the popular song from 1992 that you could imagine Kane dancing to at his prom? Let's go into a smoky VFW hall somewhere in Texas in 1992 and imagine a very young Kane sitting there in his nicest suit, seeing the bright lights reflecting off of his black and red mask. And he's sitting there slow dancing with Katie Vick to Achy Breaky Heart.
I'm actually don't think he looks that bad, because think about it. Black tux, he could have the red vest to match the mask and a bow tie. Like, I'm sure this photo exists. We need to obtain it.
Just sitting there watching him trying to grind on a cheerleader to Baby Got Back.
Did grinding exist in 1992?
It does in this scenario. That makes it funnier.
So, how did Kane kill Katie Vick?
That next week, Kane comes out on Raw and says that Katie was a friend of his and Katie Vick is dead. He says that Katie died from a car accident and that it was not a murder. Kane explains that Katie came to his very first match 10 years ago and then explains that they went to a party and then she had too much to drink. Kane said that he drove Katie home in her car, which was a stick shift, which he wasn't familiar with. And then Kane said he had an accident and Katie was killed and he broke his arm. Kane says that all he has to say is exactly what he said to Katie's parents. I'm sorry.
This is really weird because this is the first time we see Kane humanized. So there's this big dude in a mask with long hair standing in the middle of the ring and being like, "It was dark one night. I was driving a car down the road and I didn't really know how to drive a stick shift." And you're like, what am I watching?
So what you're saying is it wasn't his fault.
Oh no, that's foreshadowing.
It all comes full circle with goddamn Gene Snitsky. So Triple H comes out and interrupts. He says that he knows that Kane was drinking too that night, and that's why they had the accident. And Triple H says that when they did the autopsy on Katie, they found Kane's semen, which... Why? Why are we bringing that up?
Yeah.
Triple
title
H...
versus title wasn't enough.
It had to be an episode of Law and Order SVU.
Let's talk about Kane's jizz, guys. Then Triple H says that Kane was in love with Katie, but she didn't love him back. Triple H says that Kane wasn't charged with murder or manslaughter, but he wants the whole world to know that Kane was the one that killed Katie Vick. And then Triple H asks if Kane forced Katie to have sex with him. And when that happened, was she alive or was she dead? In any world, why would you think that's a good idea to try to do this?
Yeah.
Who in their right mind would think this is okay?
Yeah, this is an awful storyline.
I love it. We got to talk about Kane's semen. Let's talk about the forensic files.
Look at them. Look at them. In this sample, they're just swimming around. Little masks and little tails. Look at it. It's cum.
I get you're trying to humanize someone, but how is trying to humanize this demon, this murderous demon into a guy that accidentally killed somebody in high school, and then he goes and turns out he's also a nymphomaniac? Who thinks that's a great idea?
Yeah, it's just awful all around.
Oh, I hate the storylines. Is this worse than HLA? This has to be worse than HLA, right?
I think this is worse than HLA because HLA, in all honesty, was just like a 2 or 3 show thing, and you could kind of contain it. But this happens in the build-up, and then it's referenced in the build-up to the next pay-per-view. Where it's more than reference. There's going to be a segment we'll talk about on the next episode that is definitely, it ties into this, that happens the night after No Mercy, that is always listed as one of the worst moments of all time.
I mean, that's definitely the worst angle of that year, for sure.
So I would like to point out that, throughout this whole night, we're seeing hot starts. We're seeing people get attacked during their entrance. We're seeing people fight when they get close to the ring. Kane gives up the best chance at attacking Triple H in this match during Triple H's water spitting routine. Imagine being Kane. You're in there. You're being accused of like having sex with a corpse and killing a woman. And Triple H is doing his water spitting routine. And you're like, yeah, when you're done with that, though, I'm beat your ass.
Well, they had to have the spot where they held up both the titles. Like, if he jumps them, the ref doesn't get a, signify that the unification match is forthcoming.
That was a demand from the ref. He says, I got to hold up both belts.
That really bothers me that they didn't actually have a tied up shot of Kyoto like holding that up. I mean, they put so much emphasis in the promos. They put a lot of emphasis in, the opening video, and then, oh yeah, we're not going to show this title for what's supposed to be the last time.
In this match, at one point, Jerry Lawler randomly brings up how many times Kane has assaulted Pete Rose. But if you watch the commercial for this pay-per-view, it's actually Pete Rose answering his door at Halloween to a bunch of trick-or-treaters that are like kids dressed as wrestlers. And then in the final scene, Kane shows up and beats the shit out of Pete Rose again. Jerry Lawler starts talking about Kane's semen. Hey, they found semen on Katie Vick. And Jim Ross says, between Katie Vick and semen, I'm having a tough time trying to focus on the winner-take-all match. And I'm like, yeah, me too.
Can we just give a shout-out to Glenn Jacobs, the man behind the Kane mask, for being put through a litany of terrible ideas and still coming out of the other end of his career an absolute legend.
The guy was a dentist at one point. The guy was the Christmas creature. This was his best character ever, hands down. And you went through like the worst storyline ever. And he still made it out perfectly fine afterwards.
Still electable into public office.
Yeah, he's made so many things work. I'm very confident he can make anything in government work with how much he's done.
Even being a libertarian.
So much happens toward the end of this match that I'm just going to recap what goes on because it gets batshit.
Yeah.
Kane does a diving clothesline. Ric Flair runs in to distract the ref. Flair does this by literally running into the ring and just shaking around. And then Kane shoves the referee out of the way and goes after Flair, who attacks Kane. Kane still turns around and big boots Triple H. Flair runs in with the World Heavyweight Championship, gets knocked down by Kane. Triple H picks up the belt, hits Kane with it while the ref is knocked out because this is the era of ref bumps. Kane kicks out, which shocks Triple H and Ric Flair. Hurricane runs down and attacks Ric Flair. Triple H pedigrees Hurricane on the floor. Flair returns. Kane gets up. Match continues. Kane tries to superplex Triple H. Triple H knocks Kane off. Triple H then jumps off into a flying nothing, letting Kane get the boot up. Kane calls for the chokeslam. Triple H fights out. Big boot. Knocks out the referee again. They fight to the outside. Kane chokeslams Triple H through the Spanish announce table. Flair goes after Kane but gets knocked out. In the end of all of this, Kane chokeslams Triple H. The ref is down. Here comes a second ref. Flair just beats up that referee. Flair comes off the top. Kane catches him and chokeslams him. Triple H uses the distraction to hit Kane with the pedigree, wakes up the ref, and gets the pin.
a lot to take in there.
I love how overbooked this was. In fact, it wasn't overbooked enough because there are like scenes where they're like Ric Flair's in the ring, maybe he's holding a weapon, and he's just like standing over the first referee and not doing a good job of hiding his presence. So they actually needed a third referee to come down there and make the count for this, in my estimation.
I think if you didn't do the three refs with Taker and Lesnar in the last pay-per-view, you might have seen that.
Right.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
People talk about Triple H burying people during this time, and in all fairness, I mean, there's some stuff that's really suspect, but like even in defeat here, Kane looked like an unstoppable monster. They made him look like a horror movie villain. Like no matter what him and Flair did, Kane just kept coming back.
This is definitely not the storyline to give Kane that title.
No.
Like we would be sitting here just talking about, oh yeah, it was cool seeing Kane win the World Heavyweight Championship, but let's talk about Katie.
The absolute best part of this match is, and this happens a couple different times, King goes after Jim Ross's journalistic integrity several times during this match. Like, JR is trying to move on. He doesn't want to talk about Katie Vick. And he's just like, you always know what college they go to and what sport they played. How come you're not investigating this murder?
For once, Jerry Lawler's not wrong. JR is going to call nephew Michael Cole over from SmackDown and be like, hey, can you help me look into this since you were a reporter at one point?
Michael Cole was an award-winning war correspondent. And he called SmackDown 2012. So he's seen some tough times.
I don't blame Jim Ross for not wanting to dig into Kane's past, because in canon, the man had set him on fire before.
Not yet.
Not yet. That's actually
yet?
coming.
He knew it was coming. He knew I am one cross word away from this man setting me on fire. So he didn't touch it.
Triple H is now the World Heavyweight and Intercontinental Champion. So say bye-bye to the Intercontinental Championship for a little while.
Bye-bye, IC title.
We miss you.
Absolutely.
Leave the memories alone.
Absolutely no weight to this match as I was watching it. Like, I'm sure maybe this was, emotional at the time, but as we've outlined here, it comes back within a couple of months. So honestly, this had no point whatsoever.
Stephanie McMahon's backstage. She's watching the show when someone knocks on her door. It's Tracy. Steph wants to talk to her and apologizes to Tracy for kicking her out of the arena last week. And Steph says she understands bad relationships. She just got done watching her ex-husband. Stephanie asks Tracy if she still loves Undertaker. Tracy says hell no, admits that they were together in the past, but that it's all been a ruse. She's been lying to frame the Undertaker this whole time for cheating on his wife because Heyman and Lesnar kind of coerced her into it. And Tracy does say, confidentially, between you and I, yes, it was all a lie. And I'm like, Tracy, look to your right. There's a cameraman right there.
Do you not understand how wrestling works, Tracy?
There's cameras everywhere. Tracy wants Mark back. She doesn't care about a pregnant wife. She'll do what it takes to get him back. And then the Undertaker appears from behind the door. He's been listening this whole time, and it's been a setup. He calls Tracy a lying bitch, and he leaves.
What the fuck did you expect to happen, lady?
Michael Cole at the end of the segment goes, man, it's like a soap opera. And it's like, no, don't say that, Cole. They're going to start making the comparison. You can't just say it.
I wrote down here, what kind of Eric Braeden bullshit is this? When they do cut back to Cole and Taz, there's like an incredibly tan dude dressed like Hulk Hogan, but he actually has hair. And he just holds up this giant sign that says, Mr. Tan is that damn good.
I saw that. Is he calling himself Mr. Tan?
I guess. I tried looking up Mr. Tan in Arkansas and nothing popped up, so.
The legend of Mr. Tan.
Can't wait till we make merch. That's how we find Mr. Tan and see what he's up to. We make merch infringing on his intellectual copyright, and he'll find us.
Yeah, he's just got to see a shirt while he's out and about.
It's like, wait, they recognized me. They remember me. I must tell the world who I am.
Up next, the finals of the WWE Tag Team Championship Tournament. Rey Mysterio and Edge teaming up to take on Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle.
Starting tonight, a tag team tournament.
6-1-9 spear! Mysterio and Edge advance!
For these WWE Tag Team Titles.
They advance!
The new champions will be crowned at No Mercy.
Uh-oh, look out! It's a man! The execution! Edge and Mysterio are heading to No Mercy!
I want the best tag team division in the history of this business.
Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit will be teammates waist. The ankle lock. Locked into Kidman. Cena. Benoit. Crossface. And Kidman has no choice. Kidman taps to the crossface. Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit advance to meet the Guerreros. Oh, man, it's breaking down. Uh-oh. Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle despise each other.
Kurt Angle jumped me from behind, man. I barely got away. He's in there. Help!
You actually think I had something to do with the Guerreros attacking you last week? How gullible are you? If I were gonna go after you, I'd do it to your face.
The Guerreros versus Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. At stake, a shot at Edge and Rey Mysterio. Crown the WWE Tag Team Champion at No Mercy. Oh, look at that, the referee locked down. The ankle lock is locked in. The ankle lock locked in. The Guerreros tapping. No ref. Chavo's got a chair. And Chris Benoit. Steel chair in hand.
Oh, man.
Oh, no. Kurt, look out.
Benoit's gonna get suspended.
Wait a minute. Benoit clock Chavo. Oh, my God, what a shot. Chair to Eddie Guerrero. Angle slam. Angle slam. Benoit going back into the ring. 1, 2. Angle and Benoit are going to No Mercy.
4 great competitors going at it at No Mercy.
Angle, Benoit, Edge, Mysterio. Tag team gold.
We're establishing the SmackDown tag team division without using any established tag teams at all.
I noticed that. I saw the brackets and I was like, what is going on? What was one team like Rikishi and Devon?
No, Rikishi and Mark Henry.
Mark Henry, yeah.
Rikishi and Mark Henry, Devon and Farouk, Cena and Kidman, Tajiri and Brock, I think was one.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Oh, so I did a bad job of watching SmackDown.
I've heard the SmackDowns in this build were actually really good.
So this was like when I really started getting into wrestling, because I remember some of these. Don't ask me why. I just remember some of these bikini matches between Dawn Marie and Tori.
I wonder why you remember that.
So main event of SmackDown, October 10th. Tag team title tournament match between Edge and Rey versus Tajiri and Brock Lesnar. Edge has an entertaining encounter with Brock, who's frustrated with Edge's skill. Late in the match, Rey hits Tajiri with the 619. Edge follows up with a spear. Edge covers up Tajiri for the win. And then Lesnar goes crazy, attacking Rey, Edge, and Tajiri. And then Undertaker comes down to make the save for those guys.
I'm surprised Brock actually stuck around for it. Like, I just imagined him leaving Tajiri high and dry.
Just everything in this tournament was just so strange. Just so many people you wouldn't expect to be partnered up together. It was like originally Reverend Devon and Batista were supposed to be teamed up together, and they never explained why Batista wasn't with him. They just announced Devon, and as he comes down, Farouk's with him. And Tony Chimmel's like, coming down to the ring, Reverend Devon and Farouk.
The only 2 like actual tag teams in this tournament are Billy and Chuck and Los Guerreros. Everyone else is just a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
Well, Los Guerreros weren't really much of a tag team before this either, because if you remember, Eddie's been feuding with Edge. So it's a really weird build-up. I will say pairing Rey Mysterio and Edge was a really good idea to get both of them over as faces.
As weird as this is, and how much this shouldn't have worked, I mean, look at how much those 4 men in this match benefited. They all became huge stars. Like, all of them, like, we're going to win world titles again. And all of them are Hall of Fame bound with 1 asterisk.
Yeah, Kurt. You meant Kurt because he's already in, right?
That's exactly what he means.
I meant Kurt because, you know, they don't let just anyone with no moral standing into the Hall of Fame. I mean, that man had a child out of wedlock.
Whoa.
Scandal.
Wow. So, I mean, this match was phenomenal. This was PWI's match of the year. And it's really understandable once you get towards the tail end of this match, just with all of the false finishes and some of this very creative offense both teams are putting in. It was just a phenomenal match.
I loved how Edge is using Rey Mysterio as a weapon through this whole thing. And also, you forget Edge is like 6'4", 6'5" until he's in the ring with these three. And you're like, wow, how tall is Edge? Because he's not built like a big man, you know?
Right.
This is also the beginning of what they called the SmackDown 6, which is when Heyman's booking SmackDown and he's got his 6 guys you can throw in any combination and they'll have the match of the night. And
Right.
Benoit, Angle, Ray, and Edge are 4 of those. The other 2 are Eddie and Chavo. But I say go out of your way to see this match. This is the 3rd pay-per-view, and Kurt Angle's been in a show-stealing match every time so far, 100% of the time.
And he hasn't been at the top of the card either. Every single one of these matches, it's like middle of the card for him.
Yeah.
And like we've said before, the guy's been WWE champion before, and this guy is just making every single person in this match look like $1 million.
I mean, he opened SummerSlam with Ray.
And the guy's WWE Tag Team Champion, and then 2 months from now, he's going to be WWE Champion. It's crazy to see the wide range of roles Kurt can play in at this time.
At the end of this match, Angle blocks an execution, gets the ankle lock on Edge. Edge rolls through, applies the ankle lock of his own. Angle rolls through that and gets the ankle lock again, and Edge taps out. This sounds really anticlimactic, but it really isn't. Like, if you're not watching it, you don't really understand how hype this crowd was.
There were better finishes in this match than the finish that they went with.
Like Edge throwing Ray onto Benoit, who's sitting on the outside of the ring, going from like a powerbomb position into a moonsault.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
That was a great spot. When Edge throws Ray to Kurt, who's sitting on the top rope, and then they go into the Hurricanrana from the top rope. There's just so many amazing spots that you could have easily ended that match on. I agree with you, Bucket. It wasn't the best way to end that match, but I mean, they did a very good job of keeping everybody on the edge of their seats as they were both applying those ankle locks.
And like, there was one where Benoit accidentally hits his top rope move onto Kurt, like right before one of them goes for it. Like, that would have been a great finish. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think Ray and Edge should have won, but it would have been a better finish than the one we got. There was like a 619 onto Benoit while he was applying the crossface.
Yeah, I thought that was a great counter.
Yeah, but really, Kurt and Chris should have been the ones to go over, because if Edge and Ray would have won, it's like, hey, look, we're nice guys and we're tag team champions. They wouldn't really have much to do. It was a great spot for them to be in, and as you said, like, they elevated each other here. They were like, everyone got elevated, but they just wouldn't have had any legs as tag team champions. But like this whole odd couple pairing of Chris and Kurt, which never did they ever get a tag team name?
No,
they don't.
Just Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle.
No. But they're the first ever WWE Tag Team Champions, which gives SmackDown its own set of tag team titles.
Which is technically, ironically, like the lineage, at least according to Wikipedia, is now the Raw Tag Team titles.
Really?
Yeah, they they have 2 pairs of tag team titles here simultaneously, and when they get unified later, the World Tag Team and the WWE Tag Team, they keep the name WWE Tag Team, so the World Tag Team goes away, even though those were way older. So like the titles that are now held by the Street Profits that are red on the Raw brand, exactly as Jake said, on Wikipedia, the first 2 sitting pretty, well, Kurt's pretty, is those 2 guys.
I find it so weird that they cut off the lineage of the original, like the World Tag Team titles. That's like the ones that Demolition held, all the big names back in the 80s. You would think they would keep the lineage there, but what do I know?
Well, technically, this is going to sound mushy. It's like all the titles are there. All the ones that are absorbed are equally valid. But that's kind of hard to represent in a Wikipedia page.
Just a little bit.
Backstage, Undertaker is getting his broken hand looked at. The doctor has a shot and is hesitant, saying the shot is unethical. Taker's like, listen, Larry, without that shot, I ain't going to make it through Hell in a Cell, man.
God damn it, Larry.
Taker says he'll give the shot to himself if he has to. He's working hurt. Somewhere Jesse Ventura sheds a tear over the failed wrestlers union. So the doctor gives Undertaker the shot. And I thought growing up, I saw this backstage segment, later on because I wasn't watching this pay-per-view. But I saw the shot, and in my misunderstanding, I was like, oh, that must be steroids. I heard steroids make you feel better.
I mean, you could still, take that as steroids.
I guess, in the hand.
Right in the hand. Who hasn't tried to get beefed up by pricking, a vein in your middle finger?
I thought he was diabetic.
Drake, you and him have something in common now.
Oh, yeah, more than what we already have in common. We're both diabetic. We're both really into Limp Bizkit. He has a motorcycle. I have a sidecar. So we go from that to the women's championship match: Victoria versus Trish Stratus.
Yep, we've got ourselves an up and coming challenger to Trish Stratus, Miss Victoria. She's easily one of my favorite female competitors of that time. I love Trish and Lita, but Victoria was one of those that always felt really underutilized and underappreciated. So, as we had mentioned in previous podcasts, she debuted a couple of months before, kind of pairing up with Molly Holly. September 23rd, Raw, she loses a triple threat match between Trish, Victoria, and Molly Holly. Trish retains the women's championship in a really good match. And as the weeks leading up to this, Victoria makes reference to, hey, I could have been in WWE as long as Trish, but we were both bodybuilders at one point, and everybody thought that Trish was prettier than me. And so she's the one that's ended up going and becoming successful off of this. So basically a lot of the storyline is built around the fact that Victoria is jealous of Trish's success and Trish's beauty. The next week on Raw, Trish and Victoria face off in a women's title match. Towards the end of the match, Victoria smashes a chair over Trish's head, causing a DQ. And then she really just beats the hell out of Trish, finishing off that match. And it just kind of continues on from there, where the two are just talking about how Trish had all these advantages for being pretty, and Victoria wants to claim something and take something away from Trish that means a lot to her. That's pretty much how we got there.
Does Victoria have a finishing move?
The Widow's Peak has to be coming at some point.
That is such a dumb word.
Why do you hate the word peak so much? It's so simple and so easy to say.
It's just been a recurring segment, here, this entire show. I'm just sitting here trying to enjoy myself, and Funaki's, he sounds like a baby chick, right? He's just like peak, 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 peak. And then I'm looking at Victoria and I'm like, oh yeah, she's going to hit her move. What's her move?
This match is a really basic heel versus face stuff. Trish goes for her bulldog off the ropes. I can't think of the name right now. Is it Stratisfaction?
I think it's Stratisfaction.
All right. And Victoria backflips Trish out of it, and Trish rolls Victoria up to skate by with the win. But after the match, Victoria boots Trish in the face, and the referee is on Victoria. I mean, as soon as she boots Trish in the face, the ref's like, hey, you want to square up?
It's basically like in the UFC when somebody gets a knockout, the ref just jumps on top of the person. It's like, all right, you're done. You're done.
Hey, where was this motivation when Flair did 20 run-ins earlier? What was the ref doing then?
Victoria has a really good flip leg drop, doing a flip into the ring and doing a leg drop on Trish. I really appreciated that move.
That was seamless. It
was really nice.
Absolutely effortless.
I do like that they're in Mormon country, and entire match, the crowd's chanting, "We want puppies."
one of my favorite things about this match was their outfits were they looked like they had really interesting textures. Like I wanted to like pet Victoria's like pant leg. Like it looked like it'd be really smooth going one way, but like rough going the other way, like almost like corduroy or like, and Trish had some sort of like shininess going on too. And I was like, I don't know, it's just a thought that I had. Jerry was on fire during this match too. He asked JR if he's sexist. You shouldn't be sexist, JR. Broads hate that.
Like 2 seconds later, he also says, yep, these puppies are exclusive only to Raw.
But then good old JR isn't much better. He refers to Victoria as pre-menstrual.
I don't remember this, and I'm kind of mad that he said that.
He's supposed to be better than this, but then he drops a line like that.
I really am looking forward to Survivor Series because like the weeks leading up to Survivor Series, we really see Victoria take on this psycho girl persona. And then we also get one of the greatest female entrance songs of all time, All the Things She Said by Tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
Bucket, if you haven't heard that song, it's very underrated.
What song is this?
It's called All the Things She Said by Tattoo, like Tatu.
Do the lyrics go, all the things she said, all the things she said?
Yes.
Running
all
through
the things
my
she
head.
said, all the things she said, running through my head, running through my head, running through my head.
I bet it took like 17 people to write this.
I think they're Swedish or something.
I would play it now because I have it up on the phone, but legal rights and stuff.
All right, coming up next, main event time. Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker. Hell in a Cell.
Brock Lesnar is still the champion, but the Brock Undertaker issue is only going to get uglier from here. Brock Lesnar with the championship goal to the skull of The Undertaker. Lesnar coming out of nowhere, leveling the dead man. His situation has turned ugly in a hurry. And now Lesnar from behind again. Here comes the pain. And out from Lesnar to The Undertaker. Oh my God. The propane tank. Lesnar! Oh! Propane tank! Off the arm of The Undertaker.
The Undertaker's hand is officially broken.
Oh, no, that's...
However, The Undertaker insists on competing in his rematch against you, Brock, for the WWE title. And I've decided to name the stipulation Hell in a Cell.
What kind of a man is The Undertaker? The Undertaker who has shortened careers, who has taken years off of men's lives in hell in a cell. Now the question remains, what kind of a man is The Undertaker? Quite frankly, I'm not qualified to answer that question. But Tracy, on the other hand...
How could you, Mark? For 3 months, you have lied to me and slept with me, and now I find out you're married and your wife is pregnant. You're a bastard.
No mercy now.
I haven't seen this woman in about 7 years.
No more forgiveness.
Years before I ever met my wife, Sarah.
No running now.
I don't know what she wants.
'Cause you've made it my business.
All I know is the last week of my life has been a living hell due to Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman. But let me guarantee you something. The hell that I've been through is nothing compared to the hell that I'm going to put you two through.
I won't hold back.
Undertaker's hand before Hell in a Cell!
In the
So at this point of the night, or that point of the day, I don't know. Jake and I are splitting one WWE Network account, his account. So, he, had to watch it and I had to watch it, and we couldn't both be watching it at the same time from different places. We couldn't watch it together because, quarantine. So I had to try and find this match elsewhere. And I goofed. Did you know that this isn't the only Hell in a Cell match that these two have wrestled together?
Yeah, there's one years later.
Yeah, I watched the one in 2015. I was like, why is the crowd lit differently? Why is Undertaker's hair different? Where did Paul's hair go? Why isn't he wearing a cast? And I was too invested in the match by the end of it. Once I finally realized this is the wrong one. So I was thinking we could potentially compare and contrast and see if anything changed in the years between the two matches. Is that something you guys are down for?
Yeah, sure.
Hell yeah, man. Let's do it. Things really start to pick up with Undertaker and Brock. One week, Undertaker faces Matt Hardy, and it's basically a Falls Count Anywhere match. And so they start running towards the back, and then Lesnar attacks Undertaker during the match and starts beating up Brock towards this. It's basically like a boiler room, and Brock takes a propane tank and just destroys Taker's hand in the process, and he breaks it. So that's how we get the cast involved in the match. And then 1 week we have this woman brought into the equation, and she claims, oh yeah, Mark is cheating on his wife with me. He truly loves me. And it's another one of these kind of soap opera drama storylines that are really stupid, but that's kind of how they really built up this match. And so it's a lot of back and forth of, once again, where both men get some great offense in on each other in the SmackDowns leading up to this show. But it gets more and more brutal every week. And it's crazy just to see how things get leading up to a Hell in a Cell match. And probably one of the most brutal Hell in a Cell matches that I've seen.
Yeah, it was super brutal. The whole story to this is that Undertaker's known for his strikes, but he hurts himself every time he strikes Lesnar with the cast. And I'm like, maybe just use the other hand.
My left hand's not as strong as my right hand.
And that's a valid argument, I guess. But there's also Undertaker punches Lesnar in the stomach with the cast, and Lesnar leaps into the air like he just got knocked out in Street Fighter.
KO!
It's so good. You expect to hear when he gets hit just the
So in 2015... Lesnar juices pretty immediately. Did he also juice in this match?
I think it's later on. Taker's the first one to bleed.
No, Brock's the first one to bleed. Brock.
Yeah, you're right.
One of the first times that Taker hits Lesnar over the head with the cast. Brock hops outside of the ring, and we start getting color from him there.
Yeah, and when Lesnar gets busted open, Paul Heyman sounds like he just saw someone get murdered.
No! So Lesnar juices. Paul is great. So far, these are sounding pretty similar.
Did Paul show color in his match in 2015?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Paul bleeds in this match, in the 2002 one.
Yep. Taker strikes him through the cage.
It's you just see the cast just kind of pop out at one point, and it's kind of like whack-a-mole. It's just pow.
I have goofed. Was Mike Chioda the ref in this one?
I don't know.
He was.
He was.
All right. They were like, all right, Chioda, you already did it once. You can do this.
Did they rip the padding off of the ring and expose the wooden boards?
No, Brock kept yeeting the steel steps. once he does it, he just throws the steps on the other side of the ring. Like, he almost hits cameraman every single time he does it.
Yep. And then they both end up just bleeding buckets, and the ref doesn't put gloves on or nothing. You can see how much their like medical protocols have changed over the years.
How many times did you see blood just somehow get on the camera lens?
Oh, multiple times. It was gross.
Taker was clearly bleeding a lot more than Brock in that match.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was, by the time you get done with the match, you just look at the mat and it's more red than it is white.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, speaking of the color of the ring, did this match in 2002 also have Susan G. Coleman pink ropes and ring apron?
No.
Dang it. Well, Brock's music was the same. That hasn't changed in all this time period.
That's true. The really impressive part of the 2002 match was the finish, because Lesnar reverses a tombstone pile driver, and then he just tosses Undertaker into the air and catches him on his shoulders and hits an F5 and pins him. Like, it was super impressive.
Sounds really cool. That sounds better than, being beat up by the Wyatt family and carried off.
Yeah, the first Hell in a Cell between those two was way better than the one you watched, and I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry you had to sit through the second one.
That's fine. It's okay.
And after this, Lesnar climbs on top of the cell and celebrates to end the show, and like fans are starting to cheer Lesnar at this point because he's such a destroyer with a great moveset.
It's so weird. I think like just seeing how much Brock went through in that match and how much pain he inflicted on Taker. I think that was a match that he really earned the respect from the fans in.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I'll make this one quick. There's that entire segment where they're trying to start to rip off the cast, and they eventually do it, but Paul throws his belt into the cell. Brock ties his arm up and has Paul hold Taker's arm up against the cell. And there's so many chair shots to his hand, and they sound brutal. It like he hits them so hard that he breaks Paul's belt in half. There were so many vicious blows with that. It was two big meaty men slapping meat. Two bloody big pieces of meat slapping meat. This was a match where you don't expect a 25-year-old Brock Lesnar to put on such an amazing match with somebody like Taker.
All right, well, this has been fun. This has been No Mercy 2002. I think it was a good pay-per-view.
You've had some great tag team wrestling in this show. You've had some terrible world championship matches. You've had some great world championship matches. I think this was better than Unforgiven, but not nearly as good as SummerSlam 2002.
The bucket list.
The bucket list for this show is number 5. Everyone involved in that tag team match, and basically just the reverence that they showed for tag team wrestling. Kane also made the bucket list because he no-sold Ric Flair's offense in the middle of that title match, and it was one of the funniest goddamn things I've ever seen in my life. Of course, that middle rope doing its own LimeWire spot. That rope makes the bucket list. Jamie Noble versus Tajiri, both those guys put on an excellent match. And Don Murray. Don Murray, you are on the bucket list because no one can prove to me that you're a bad wrestler. And again, open invitation. Feel free to prove me wrong. Send it to me at WrestleBucket.
For sure. And speaking of social media, you can follow us at RPA Pod on Twitter. Look us up on Facebook, Ruthless Passive Aggression. I think we're also at RPA Pod on there. We are Ruthless Passive Aggression on Instagram as well. And, it's been fun, but we'll see you at Survivor Series 2002. I'm Drake Jackson.
I'm Jake Edwards.
I am the WrestleBucket.
We'll see you next time on Ruthless Passive Aggression.
Bye, buddies.